First game in a series I'm going to be doing on Lantern Control and how it matches up with 8 rack. Opening hand, unkeepable, obviously no lands. As far as opening hand goes, this one's actually not that bad. I like double targeted hand disruption right out the gate. Raven's Crime and Dakmor Loop, Mutavault for a clock. It looks pretty good. Opponent went to 6. I put this path on the bottom, off colors, and I'd rather get my colors before I just sit there with a path that I can't play. Urborg into Inquisition, and we see that the opponent is on Lantern. We see that they're going to get their Codex Shredder, but Codex Shredder is really not the issue. It's you got to get the Lantern first. Ancient Stirrings has to come out. I'm probably going to grab Bridge later, just because I do have Mutavault. Doesn't look like a stellar hand for our opponent. Codex go, no big deal. It's important to get the rack out early against Lantern Control. You don't want them thought seizing that. You don't want them thought seizing Surgical Vat. Got to take Bridge only because I have Mutavault in hand. Otherwise, Bridge is pretty much ignorable. It's a funny little thing about the synergy between Lantern Control and 8 rack is that if you were going to build a deck specifically to mess with Lantern Control, it might look something like 8 rack, just because you basically turn Bridge into a worthless card in their hand. Everything that they're trying to do involving getting their hand empty just opens them up to rack damage. So I could double Crime and Thoughtseize here, take his Lantern before he gets a chance to play it. That was a misplay on my opponent's part. He should have played land there, and he knows it, so he scoops. Lanterns can still get locks on you. Let's start that over. There we go. So as far as this hand goes, it's pretty bad against Lantern. I don't really like not having targeted hand disruption, and not having a rack in the opening hand is really bad against Lantern. Opponent keeps 7. I was running Needles in the sideboard, mostly as a trial against Tron. This hand looks okay because of Flagstone and Smallpox synergy. Lily is great if he happens to be siding in Leyline of Sanctity. There's only a few things in the main board that that'll get around that. Shrieking Affliction on top, yes please. That's the perfect thing. Unfortunately, opponent does have Leyline, so we're in for a bit of a rough matchup. You'll notice that unlike other matchups where you would Raven's Crime before you play your enchantment, just put the enchantment down against Lantern Control. You don't want them Thoughtseize Surgical you. Turn 2 and the opponent already has locks. He's drawn the nuts here, and we may be in somewhat of a troubled spot. Needle naming Bell is probably my best play. Hopefully we can get something going. No other move to make there, seeing as we don't have a target for our Raven's Crime due to Leyline. Unfortunately, Pixis gets the lock right back after Pithing Needle, and our opponent takes away our only real out. Or broke Smallpox just to get something out of his hand. Also, it doesn't hurt us on lands since we have Flagstone. It's nice that Flagstone can search for Godless Shrine. instead of just basic planes. I actually don't run any basic planes in the main board, which might be a mistake based on Blood Moon, but so far it's been okay for me. Don't bother paying for the 2 life. It'll come in tapped regardless, just from the Flagstone's trigger, not from paying it. And within 2 turns, the opponent has simply filled his hand, gotten himself out of Shrieking Affliction range, and can pretty much disregard everything we have on the board. 1 Abrupt Decay, and I know that I'm not going to be getting any more Abrupt Decays, any more Racks, any more Lilies just from Locke. He's just going to start getting more and more of these little mill rocks, and I'm hooped. Beautiful hand to keep against Lantern. Thoughtseize to take away whatever I'd like, break his little combo. Having 2 and having different racks in the opening hand is great. Unfortunately, my opponent has 2 Abrupt Decay, so I have to take 1 here instead of taking this. Otherwise, I'll end up with no racks. The thing about having a hand with multiple racks and the knowledge of what an opponent has as far as rack removal, you can essentially turn your racks into discard spells by playing them into the Abrupt Decays. Which is what I do right here. Actually, we're going to double crime first in the hopes that he pitches that Abrupt Decay, but he doesn't. One last crime in the hopes that he gets rid of his enchant removal. He does not, but that's okay. We can have him choose between one of these 2 kill stones, and he chooses to take the rack, which in my opinion is incorrect. The rack statistically will do more damage over time than the Shrieking Affliction will. Sorry, I guess that makes it the right play for him to take the rack over Shrieking Affliction, not the wrong one. Lost Legacy naming Shrieking Affliction, and I'm very low on kills. Luckily, we've got the opponent top decking, and with no ability to tutor for his Lantern, he's in a world of trouble here. 5-turn clock essentially. It's appropriate in my opinion to do the Thoughtseize instead of the Raven's Crime here. He has got just as much chance of holding on to a land as he does holding on to some other card. But the sooner we just get the Thoughtseize out of our hand, the better. Raven's Crime will hit anything, Thoughtseize won't, so Shredder's a reasonable hit. When I needle here, I had the choice between naming Inventor's Fair and naming Codex Shredder. The reason I chose Inventor's Fair is because he can get that tutor effect off 1 turn earlier than he can get his Codex Shredder off, and that'll line up nicely with the clock that we have going. Surgical the rack. Hurts a little, but 2 turns he's really got no option left. In fact, even if he holds on to his card, he's dead regardless. I chose not to play Rest in Peace here. Not sure if that was a misplay or not. pulling back things from his graveyard. Maybe if he pulled back an Abrupt Decay, it would have been pretty deadly for us. But it would also turn off our Raven's Crime and our ability to keep his hand empty. At 2 turns left, though, I don't think it really mattered too much. It's not like even if he gets land here that he's going to make a comeback from it, because he has to spend his land to activate his Codex Shredder, and then he can't cast it until next upkeep, in which case this damage would already be on the stack. So locked him out by emptying his hand before he could get his combo pieces. Also making sure we have one of our racks on the field before things get going, so that in the situation like we just saw where he lost Legacy and he Surgical Extraction, and he actually hit both of them. All seven racks came out. It would have been almost a hopeless situation. We would have been relying on the slow, steady back of a Mutavault to get us there. But because we played those early enough, yeah, he couldn't deal with it. That's typically how things can go with Lantern, because they want to empty their hand, and we want to empty their hand, and we kill them when they empty their hand. And if they decide to sit at 3 cards and stay out of rack range, then we can beat them to death with Mutavault. And if they decide to empty their hand for bridge so that they can defend against Mutavault, we kill them with racks. So it's not a great matchup for them. As you saw in Game 2, they can get the locks on us, which, well, if Lantern gets their locks on anyone, they're in for a bad day. But we can usually pick it apart before they get us in total prison.